Pay us what you owe us, says Natasha Cloud and every other player in the WNBA. Pay us what you owe us. Didn't you see the new media deal that we just signed? 11 years, $2.2 billion, an estimated $200 million a year. Our salary cap off that number alone should go through the roof. Based on that deal alone, we should be getting paid millions of dollars. This $5.6 million salary cap you owners are proposing, preposterous.
Pay us what we're owed. That's been the rallying cry from Natasha Cloud and WNBA players throughout these CBA negotiations. And with the league's new media deal worth $2.2 billion over 11 years, you'd think the math would be simple, right? $200 million per year should translate to massive salary cap increases. Players are expecting millions. The league is offering $5.6 million per team, and social media is exploding with accusations that owners are being greedy and deceptive. But here's what nobody in the media is actually explaining. How did the league arrive at that $5.6 million number? Is it actually lowballing the players, or is there something else going on here? Because once you see the actual breakdown, this entire controversy looks very different.
How did we get there? Well, as you saw in the thumbnail, it's basic math. Let's get right into it. Please like the video, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and subscribe to the channel. I would so greatly appreciate it. We're breaking out the old Wiley calculator for this one.
Basic math. That's what this comes down to. And it's shocking how many journalists covering this story haven't bothered to walk through the actual calculation. Let's start with that headline number. Everyone keeps throwing around. $2.2 billion over 11 years. Sounds massive, right? That's roughly $200 million per year flowing into the WNBA. Except here's the critical detail that changes everything. The WNBA doesn't own 100% of their own league anymore.
Million per year. Well, what's 42% of 200 million, right? The WNBA only owns 42% of their league. NBA owners own the other 42%. A private investment group owns the 16%. The WNBA only owns 42% of their league. Okay, 200 million times 42% equals 84 million. $84 million out of that $200 million deal left for the WNBA. Fair enough.
42%. That's the WNBA's actual ownership stake in their own league. NBA owners control another 42%, and a private investment group owns the remaining 16%. This isn't new information. This ownership structure has been public knowledge since the investment deals were finalized. But somehow, it keeps getting left out of the conversation when players and media personalities talk about what the league can afford. So let's do the math that apparently nobody else wants to do. $200 million per year times 42% ownership equals $84 million. That's the WNBA's actual share of that media deal. Not 200 million, 84 million.
15 teams now in the WNBA. So we got 84 million divided by 15 equals $5.6 million. The media deal that the WNBA now has is solely responsible for the new salary cap. So I'm not sure what Brianna Stewart's reporting to Natasha Cloud and the crew. I'm not sure what Nafisa Collier's reporting to Natasha Cloud and the crew. But your new media deal, you guys are getting all of it.
Now take that 84 million and divide it across all the teams in the league. And here's where it gets interesting, because the league is expanding. They're not staying at 12 teams anymore. By the time this CBA kicks in, there will be 15 WNBA franchises. Golden State, Toronto, Portland, all coming online. 84 million divided by 15 teams equals $5.6 million per team. That's not a random number the owners pulled out of thin air. That's not them being stingy or trying to hide revenue. That is literally the entire media deal, divided equally across all teams, after accounting for the WNBA's actual ownership stake. The players are asking for more money from a media deal that they're already getting 100% of.
The WNBA, what you guys own from that media deal, your share of it the players in this new salary cap, they would be getting all of it. WNBA owners aren't putting anything to the side. Wait, but I know what some people might say. Some of the slows out there might say, well, what about the other? No. They're not entitled to the other 58%. They're not entitled to that. 42% of that is the NBA's. 16% of that is the private investment group. The WNBA, you're only entitled to 42% of that. Maybe if you do buy back that 16%, I'm sure you're gonna be buying it at an astronomical number. I was watching Chick's video, sell low, buy high. That's not really the smartest way to go about things.
But wait, some people are saying, what about that other 58%? Why aren't the players entitled to a share of the NBA's portion or the private equity portion? And this is where we need to talk about how business ownership actually works. That 42% owned by NBA owners, they paid for that stake, they invested capital. They took on financial risk during years when the WNBA was losing money. Same with the private investment group that owns 16%. They didn't get that equity for free. They purchased it, and according to reports, they're going to be buying it back at a significantly higher valuation than what they paid. So when players demand access to that other 58% of revenue, they're essentially demanding a share of money that belongs to outside investors who paid for their ownership stakes. That's not how equity works. You can't demand a cut of someone else's investment returns just because you want more money.
The players need to understand they are employees of a league that never made money. They do not have the upper hand. No, they don't. The WNBA owners view it as a big risk that the WNBA only has one good revenue-generating player and one player who draws big ratings. They're not going to lock themselves into a long-term deal until others can prove market value. Multiple teams get 50 to 75% of their gate from 2 CC games. Yup, take it or leave it. The owners are never going to bow down to these delusional players. The league isn't budging, and they probably shouldn't at this point. The union will need to sign the CBA or go ahead and strike and see what happens next. I don't believe they have leverage they think they do. Clearly, the offer is the offer at this point. Sign or strike. The league is close to exhausting my interest. I love basketball, but I am sick of the WNBA.
And here's what makes this particularly frustrating. The players have representation. Breanna Stewart, Napheesa Collier, Natasha Cloud, Nneka Ogwumika. These are the players negotiating on behalf of the union. They have access to financial advisors, lawyers, agents who understand business structures and revenue sharing. They know these numbers. They understand the ownership breakdown. So when Natasha Cloud goes on social media and says the owners keep giving them different numbers every time they meet, what's really happening? Because the owners aren't changing the math. 42% of 200 million divided by 15 teams is always going to equal 5.6 million. That calculation doesn't change based on which day you run it. What seems more likely is that the player representatives are coming back to the broader union membership and presenting the information in ways that make it sound like the owners are moving the goalposts. Maybe they're emphasizing different aspects of the proposal each time. Maybe they're framing the same number differently to make it seem like the league is being inconsistent, but the underlying math, that stays the same.
WNBA Players Association is going to destroy any momentum the WNBA had with the CC. Generational type mistake. Wow, only 15%. Yeah, that's more than enough. That's more than enough. Maybe time to pack it up and call it a day. We're screwed. I don't see them budging. Definitely not going to add a significant percentage to the revenue to the cap, assuming the players are looking for them to meet halfway. Not going to happen. Well, the cap is coming straight off the media deal. As we all know, we talked about this yesterday. Shout out to Alexa Falupu of ESPN. Sources, new proposal WNBA includes housing for players in 2026. She at least says, at least the players are getting some housing in the upcoming season. WNBA submitted a new collective bargaining agreement proposal on Friday, the league told ESPN on Saturday, with sources saying it would guarantee housing.
Look at how fans are responding to this. The comments under every CBA update tell you everything you need to know about where public sentiment is heading. People are getting exhausted. One fan writes, "The players need to understand they are employees of a league that never made money. They do not have the upper hand." Another points out that multiple teams get 50 to 75% of their gate revenue from just 2 Caitlin Clark games per season. Think about what that means. Without one player, most franchises would be looking at drastically reduced attendance. Someone else cuts straight to the point. Take it or leave it. The owners are never going to bow down to these delusional players. The league is not budging, and they probably shouldn't at this point. And then there's this one, which might be the most telling. The league is close to exhausting my interest. I love basketball, but I am sick of the WNBA. That's not a troll. That's not someone who hates women's sports. That's a fan who's genuinely invested, who wants to support the league, but who's watching this negotiation play out and losing interest because the players' demands seem disconnected from financial reality.
For all players in 2026 before being phased out in subsequent years of the deal. Under the league's new proposal, after 2026, players on their applicable minimum salary and those with 0 years of service would be provided a 1-bedroom apartment in 2027 and 2028 only. Developmental players would be provided studio apartments for the entirety of the deal. WNBA teams have been required to provide housing for players since the first CBA was ratified in 1999. In the last agreement, teams could provide housing in the form of a 1-bedroom apartment. Since 1999, the league has been required to pay for their housing. And by the time we get to 2028, they will finally be over with that. Nearly 30 years down the road, they've been paying for players' housing. 30 years in a league that makes no money. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I appreciate all the support. Like the video and subscribe. Thank you.
Now let's talk about what the owners are actually offering, because it's not just the $5.6 million salary cap. They're proposing full housing for all players in 2026. That's 100% coverage, 1-bedroom apartments league-wide. Then it phases out over the next 2 years, where only minimum salary players and developmental players get housing. By 2028, only developmental players receive housing. And you know what the response has been? Outrage. Players acting like this is an insult. But here's the context nobody wants to acknowledge. The WNBA has been required to provide housing since 1999. For 29 years, in a league that has never turned a profit, owners have been paying for player housing, studio apartments, 1-bedroom apartments, covering rent in expensive markets like New York and Los Angeles and Seattle. 29 years of subsidized housing in a league that loses money. And now, as the league finally starts to see some revenue growth, the owners are saying we're going to phase this out over the next few years so that veteran players making substantial salaries can cover their own rent, like professionals in every other sport. And somehow, that's controversial. Here's what this really comes down to. The players are getting exactly what they asked for. They demanded that the new media deal be reflected in their salaries. It is. 100% of the WNBA's share of that media deal is going into the salary cap. They're getting a 4 to 5 times raise depending on their contract tier. Developmental player spots are expanding. Pregnant players are getting trade veto power. They're even getting free league pass. The owners have made substantial concessions. Housing for everyone in year 1. Expanded rosters, better benefits, revenue sharing that gives players the entire media deal that the league actually owns. But because the players either don't understand or don't want to accept the ownership structure, they're framing this as the owners being greedy. Breanna Stewart and the negotiating committee are either genuinely confused about how equity and revenue sharing work, or they're deliberately misrepresenting the numbers to the broader player base to make it seem like they're fighting harder than they actually are. Either option is problematic, because if it's confusion, then the union has the wrong people negotiating, and if it's deliberate misrepresentation, then they're lying to their own members to cover for the fact that they can't deliver what they promised. Think about the position this puts players in. You've got Natasha Cloud going on podcasts talking about how the owners keep changing numbers. You've got players on social media saying they're being disrespected and undervalued. You've got fans who love women's basketball watching this and thinking, wait, are the players being unreasonable here? And the answer, based on the actual math, is yes, they are. The $5.6 million salary cap represents 100% of the league's media deal revenue. There is no hidden pot of money. There is no secret reserve fund. The owners aren't pocketing millions while players starve. The math is straightforward, transparent, and fair. The players want access to revenue that doesn't belong to the WNBA. They want a cut of the NBA's investment returns. They want a share of the private equity group's ownership stake. And when the owners say no, that's not how business works, the players cry foul and accuse them of being greedy. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The WNBA has one transcendent star right now who who actually moves ratings and attendance. Caitlin Clark is generating 50 to 75% of gate revenue for multiple teams with just 2 games per season. Without her, most franchises are looking at half-empty arenas and local TV ratings that barely register. The owners know this. They're looking at a league that's finally getting attention, finally seeing some financial momentum, and they're being asked to lock themselves into a long-term deal that assumes this growth continues. But what happens if Caitlin Clark gets injured? What happens if she decides to play overseas? What happens if casual fans lose interest after one season? The risk is enormous. And the owners are saying, we'll give you everything from the media deal, we'll improve your benefits, we'll expand rosters, but we're not going to commit to revenue-sharing percentages that assume growth we haven't proven we can sustain yet. That's not greed, that's basic risk management. The players want to be paid like they're in an established, profitable league, but the WNBA isn't that yet. It's a league that's never made money, that's finally seeing some positive momentum, and that needs to prove it can maintain that momentum before committing to salary structures it might not be able to afford in 3 years. So where does this leave us? The players can sign the deal that gives them 100% of the media revenue the league actually owns, plus housing, plus expanded rosters, plus better benefits. Or they can strike, walk away from the best offer they're ever going to get, and watch public support evaporate as fans realize the players are demanding money that literally doesn't exist within the WNBA's ownership structure. One fan put it perfectly. The WNBA Players Association is going to destroy any momentum the league had with the Caitlin Clark era, generational-type mistake. And they're right, because if this negotiation drags on, if players strike and miss games, if casual fans who just started paying attention decide this isn't worth the drama, the league loses the one opportunity it's had in 27 years to actually build sustainable growth. The math is simple. The offer is fair. The question is whether the players' representatives are going to be honest with their membership about what's actually on the table, or whether they're going to keep pretending there's some secret pile of money the owners are hiding, because there isn't. The calculator doesn't lie. And the longer this drags on, the more obvious it becomes that the players are fighting for something that was never theirs to begin with. So what do you think? Are the players justified in asking for more, or are they demanding a share of revenue they're not entitled to? And more importantly, do you think the union leadership has been honest with players about what the ownership structure actually means for salary negotiations? Let me know in the comments, because this is the conversation the WNBA media should have been having from the beginning, instead of just amplifying player complaints without examining whether those complaints are actually based in financial reality.